I'm going to quickly recap from last week to explain what this is, go over process for this meeting, introduce some new people participating. Main goal is updates from the last week, then check in on urgent needs. Background, most of you know, but at the risk of recapping, there's two related projects. CBA has tools to make anything of any size, and I started a small project just to help advise on what we can do with that. It quickly assembled an amazing group of people. So there's a global project that's also running in parallel to this. Just a few more minutes background. You probably all know there's a global network of thousands of community Fab Labs. And there's a project running in parallel to this one looking at how to use the whole global Fab Lab network. That's linked here. Mark, you want to do a quick intro?
My name's Marty Culpepper. I am the person tasked with on campus with helping to facilitate coordination between different maker spaces and machine shops. And as of yesterday, I was voluntold that I'm serving on the MIT committee now that is organizing MIT's response to all the PPE preparation for COVID-19.
Last week we met with the medical experts. What came out of that is ventilators isn't the urgent need. That is scaling. CPAPs are more needed, but what's much more needed is personal protective equipment. But Heather, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Heather Agler, A-G-L-E-R, as he said. I work for the FDA. I'm in our Center for Devices and Radiological Health, and I have been, our group is leading the response efforts from CDRH side of things for COVID-19. So certainly PPE, ventilators, CPAP, all these devices are things that we have been sort of tracking or concerned about. And I would say my role here is to sort of help guide you through any regulatory questions you may have. And even as we come out with sort of new policies in this area, try to help the response to sort of show some flexibility in the regulatory process, to sort of guide you through that. And that way, if anybody has any questions, they're welcome to reach out to me.
That's fabulous.
Just for clarity, the guidance is purely about ventilators or other type of ventilatory support devices. But we have been issuing these immediate in effect guidances for this that will be in effect during this response. And so this isn't going to be the last guidance that comes out. I know PPE is a huge issue, and even though we've done some EUAs and some other work, I believe there's going to be more coming out about PPE.
Rich, you did it last week, but can you do like a 30-second intro just on yourself for new people?
So I'm a respiratory therapist. I've worked at the University of Cincinnati for 40 years. I'm a professor in the College of Medicine, and I have helped develop ventilators, test ventilators, use ventilators. I've helped the Strategic National Stockpile with their purchase of ventilators and training people how to use them. And so this disaster issue that we've been preparing for and I've never had to worry about has been what I've kind of concentrated on for the last 20 years.
Well then, let me jump in. Last week, PPEs jumped out. That spawned a number of projects. And what we're going to talk about now is just a few days in. So it's not major results, it's quick check-ins. But Cameron, start in with what you were looking at in testing. And so the background to what she's talking about is how do we validate alternative media?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This is for a lot of DIY masks and stuff that's been coming out around those. So I found that most of the tests use a virus or bacteria as their challenge particle against some sort of filter material. But I think there's also an ASTM standard that uses just latex spheres that are submicron. And I think that's the route we'd want to go so that we don't overcomplicate things by introducing new bacteria into the biolab or needing to get certified to work with phages or biophages, which are just smaller viruses. But if that's, you know, as this group gets bigger and we have people that are more trained in microbiology, maybe that's something we could expand into. But this is my proposed testing apparatus design as of now. We could use the colloidal spheres that are just like made out of latex, submicron, or I've got a lot of gold particles already in the lab. And then it's basically just using a nebulizer to aerosolize those particles, sending them through a pressure tap and then the filter material and then a second pressure tap. So you can measure the number of particles that make it before and after the material, as well as the pressure difference across the filter material.
Thank you. Okay, next topic. Really quickly, shields emerged as an immediate need, and so that spawned 2 shield-related projects. Zach?
Yeah, so a lot of what we did was trying to validate what the internet had already created. So Alfonso and I spent a couple days looking at the 3D printed designs, the laser cut designs, kind of some of the other ones that had appeared in a number of different groups. So the ones that you're scrolling through right now are ones that other groups have created. So the Prusa RC1 is a 3D printed model that Prusa put together, and then there's a few others that are designed for 2D fabrication processes. So we prototyped those pretty quickly, checked them for ergonomics in the lab. If you scroll up to the top, Neil, there's a design that we put together that Alfonso is wearing, just a little bit down from that.
Okay.
So this is the one that we're trialing that we made. It does use a neoprene strap, so there's a question about cleanability of the material, but it's adjustable, it's comfortable, and it's very fast to manufacture. So it uses a very small frame piece.
Talk about first fast to manufacture.
12 seconds per mask for the front shield, and then maybe 30 seconds for the frame, and then another 30 seconds per unit for the neoprene, although the strap can be hand cut if needed.
Alfonso, talk about this direction.
Hello, everyone. So when Zach and I started iterating and talking through the phone about the mask project, he showed me Kirigami inspired one, which was really tricky in terms of like how do you flop to generate like the cylinder. And he told me like you should take a look to that. So I proposed it based on a Kirigami knot, a face mask which is basically component by only one material, which could be potentially easier to certificate because you have got only one material. And the good thing also is like every shape is super square. So we are not going to have scrap material. We are going to have at least way less scrap material. And the time of manufacturing in the Zoom are seconds. The pay you have to pay is that the assembly gets just slightly more tricky than the other one, but I think so even though with this tricky assembler, it's faster. Right now, as you can see here, there is a problem in which my nose is touching the shield, but this could be avoided by moving forward some lateral hinges we have made, so there are plenty room. Also, this model provides like horizontal adjustment, but also vertical adjustment to
Interesting. I want to go full speed ahead on prototyping, process development, investigation on campus. So in the last call, one of the really strong things that emerged was Italy uses, one of the things that emerged is the need for CPAPs versus ventilators, and then for long time wearing, the need for helmets rather than masks. Helmets aren't common in the US. I understand there's been a long discussion about when and where they come in, and there's a lot of interest in being able to use helmets for breathing assist. So that led to looking at helmet prototyping. And was that Jake?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just mostly did a study on like the pressures and flow rates that this would need. And I found some commercially available fans that are like $30 that seem like they'll do it. So I ordered some of those. You can also do it with a collection of these 5015 fans, which are a really common 3D printer part.
Sorry, but what are you assuming in the filtration on the fan?
I did pressure drop through an N95 mask, N95 mask, and assume that whatever inline media would be similar or less. And there's
Rich, does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so. But again, the helmet is just another way to connect the ventilator to the patient. Sometimes you connect the ventilator there, so you take the same ventilator that you would, use with a face mask or use with a tube down the throat.
So that's why, is it useful for Jake to be figuring out the fan, or is that a significantly separable system?
I think those two things are completely separate. I think if again, if Heather's still there, Heather, if somebody fabricated a helmet, would FDA allow us to use it? You probably can't answer that question.
Yeah. I think we're working on ways in which we can use our emergency use authorization for things such as that. I don't think we have anything out there so far that talks about emergency use authorization for like newly fabricated, but other options are to do some type of accelerated review. And when I say that, there are some types of things when they're saying they'll review them in a day or two. So it's not business as usual at the FDA. We're definitely trying to work with people to get things out on the field that are needed. Yeah, and obviously one of the bigger questions too is, I mean, it looks contained from the picture, but you want to make sure that you're not doing something such that it's causing the disease itself to get in the air around the person, you know, outside of the helmet.
So my thinking was was also that they might, I think the helmet is actually really simple to manufacture. The pumps can be cheap. The fittings can all be printed. I was thinking this could be like better PPE. I don't know if that's a crazy idea, but it seems like having positive pressure rather than a sort of fabric or fiber mask with leaks around the edges might, in the long run, if this is going to be a few months, having reusable PPE with positive pressure rather than masks.
Rich, to focus, Jake, what's the most important use case for this? Is it positive pressure for medical workers? Is it long-time wearers?
This device is suited and intended specifically for patients. The other device that healthcare workers wear are the PAPRs, are completely different and do need a source. And I think completely different use cases. One creates a positive pressure to help keep anything from getting into the mask of the caregiver. And this one is used to treat the patient.
Got it.
So yeah, this is a good picture of the PAPR on the right from 3M.
To focus, Jake, since they're neighboring, which is more urgent for him to continue looking at?
I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think, I've worn the PAPRs before. If you have to wear this thing for 3 or 4 hours while you're in the intensive care unit trying to do things, it's really uncomfortable. I know you guys all have ideas, and we started this whole thing with ventilators, but right now the need continues to be anything that substitutes for an N95 mask with new materials or faster ability to make it. Regular masks, all that is more important probably than either of these devices. But I would think the helmet for treatment of a patient is something we don't have at all. So it might be the most worthwhile.
Jake, it sounds like you should worry less about where the air comes from, but just focus on prototyping this such that it could go through a pipeline.
Yeah, I've ordered material and a heat sealer.
Yeah, so Alex Slocum has a ventilator design. And when this all started, he moved pretty quickly to try to get this thing used. He's already had it tested in pigs. The doctors have taken a look at it.
Interesting. For everybody else, Alex is one of MIT's machine building, gods of machine building.
If all you have is this, it's not going to work. It's not sufficient. You're going to have a way to create that positive pressure during the expiratory side, which can be done with a valve on the end of this.
Tim, you have a few things in the chat.
Sorry, I'm a maker at Artisans Asylum here with Lars. We're over in Somerville, and I am using 3D printers, but just for tooling. So you guys can see this. I have a design that has a simple lofted profile flat on this side, then goes into a pleat, if you guys can see those channels. With the idea that you can take a roll of, this is just a polypropylene non-woven fabric, and draw it through in order to pleat it. So the idea is making disposable surgical masks on a machine that can be, built at any well-equipped shop across the country that could produce up to 1,000 units an hour. 3D printed PAPR being printed right next to me that uses a Milwaukee 12-volt battery that you could get at Home Depot, the same sort of blower fan that Jake was just showing, and a HEPA filter from a Roomba. And I have a thought for sort of a hybrid hood that would use any of these Prusa face shields or any sort of face shield, use a very inexpensive plastic hood material and just be taped up around it. So if the shield can, last through a day, the hood can be disposed every patient visit, and then the PAPR can last, a month. It lets us use the cheapest, most disposable materials for every patient visit and get a little more durability out of a few of the parts.
Very interesting, and raises a couple points, and one for you, Marty. Again, just in the Fab Lab network, we have thousands of sites. The point of this project is exactly what Tim was talking about. Once we use the fancy lab equipment and validate and test, how do we really use this as the capacity to scale? Filter media is a big one. Let's see, last week I linked a nice study that Cambridge did with this chart on the filtering of everyday materials. And part of what Cameron started was how we do this testing to validate these. Then Filipos and Zach started looking at alternate ways to produce filter media. Filipos, do you want to talk?
Yeah, really fast. I'm looking into this process called electrospinning. If we scroll down a bit, if you can please scroll down, further down. Yeah, right here. Right there. So you just, you can have a polymer solution or a polymer melt hosted in a syringe. Of course, the polymer solution is much simpler because you don't have to heat it up. You just apply voltage potential between a needle between the syringe at the needle tip and a grounded aluminum collector, and you just by tuning the process parameters, you can start having nanofiber or microfiber membranes. So electrospinning is the workhorse for every biomedical engineering lab because you can use medical grade polymers. I guess melt electrospinning is better because it doesn't involve any chemical solvents. And you can see here, this is two images from a publication that I had last year. On the right side, you can have on a cover slip that is 25 by 25 millimeters, you can have 0.5 millimeter thick membrane with this microporous structure. And there are ways that and the machine, you can set up a machine very fast using off-the-shelf components, and you can parallelize it and increase throughput. And I have some ideas, but if it gets traction, I can work on that. Yeah, for new materials, I think it's an efficient way to make filters and test them. But
okay. What's the machine you're looking for?
We want a machine that can very quickly stamp out seals for the surgical masks, right? The seals that hold the pleats together.
Meaning squish and heat?
Yeah.
A rapid heat and squish machine would be a good test case for the kind of stuff Jake is doing. Let's see, Liang or Zach, there was a folded mask. What is this project?
So this project is about masks. So you don't know, I'm Liang from Tangible Media, and I have a product design background. So this same shortage of masks happening in China, and the bottleneck is after I confirm with local supplier here in New Hampshire of nothing, it's the same. The bottleneck is a non-woven fabric. Okay. So I was wondering, like the traditional pipeline is okay. This company produces a to the mask maker, then then mask maker making mask and get distributed. So I was wondering if there's a way that the manufacturer produce the fabric and do some minimum cutting and minimum fabrication and can directly send to people to user. So I designed this design here, like you just need a flat piece of non-woven fabric and it can fold it to a feasible mask. And with the minimum material, minimum jig, which can short the pipeline and can accelerate the whole production of the masks. So okay. That's my design shown here. Okay, cool. So I found some, I opened up this HIPAA filter, and turns out there are 4 kinds of different non-woven fabrics in it. And there's one particular, if you scroll down a little bit, yeah, this here, in this picture, this max density, I don't know what exactly this non-woven, what exactly standard it is, but we would like to test in Cameron's machine if possible. And that looks very similar to those fabric I found in other N95 masks. So it'll be great if we can harvest
material from these HEPA filters. And these HEPA filters can be bought from Amazon easily. And from each filter, we can get like 33 centimeter by 38 centimeter piece.
Mask designs that just the user fold sounds great for throughput. Clearly what's rate limiting here is sourcing and validating the filter media, which is common across many of these projects. There's good next steps on each of these projects. Are there any new urgent needs that we haven't discussed?
We're getting some feedback from our group that surgical gowns, doctor gowns are in high demand, and there's an emerging need for hairnets as well.
This is Heather Agler. I just thought I'd let you know too that a lot, like obviously it's because the demand is high for the current response efforts, but it was sort of made worse because there was a very large recall of Cardinal Health gowns. And so I believe from what we're hearing is the biggest need is for level 3 sterile surgical gowns.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Let's bump that up.
One of the things that we're running into is what are some of the key guidelines that are going to help us create a sterile workflow or a work environment. As we think about putting, masks or face shields into the hands of medical workers, what are the controls that we need to have in place? That is not a clear set of guidelines for us, but I know it's something that we need to hit, and it just takes up more time. And so if someone's got that experience and can document it and create a set of guidelines that we could sort of follow, I think that would help a lot.
There are lots of overlapping projects. What we end up having here is we have medical experts, we have all kinds of industry capacity, we have government, all following these issues. And so a lot of these things we had to zip through. You can use these issues to keep those conversations going. Thank you all. Stay safe, be well. This is an amazing group. It's a pleasure to work with all of you. Hopefully we can flatten the curve.
Thank you.